Testimony on inflated SOE sponsorship deals is being heard at the state capture inquiry today. Transnet Group Capital's Daniel Phatlane says contracts between the parastatal and the New Age newspaper would change. This means millions more flowed into the Gupta-owned media group. Riante Naidu is following the story for us. She joins us now. So just first, let's unpack this partnership and sponsorship between these two, Transnet and the New Age newspaper. What did we hear today?
Well, Shahan, essentially what Dan Phatlane explained was that in 2011, a Gupta business associate, Jacques Roux, approached Transnet. So the parastatal was approached. And he essentially asked that they sponsor these infamous New Age business breakfasts. What he initially asked for was the sponsorship of 4 breakfasts at 735,000 Rand a breakfast. Now, this happened under the leadership of then CEO Brian Molefe. But when the deal was eventually concluded and signed off on, Transnet was actually sponsoring 16 breakfasts with a price tag of 15 million Rand.
Wow. Yeah, so what are the concerns raised by Phatlane today?
So there were a few issues with the contract, the agreement. Firstly, it started out as a sponsorship agreement, but it soon turned into a partnership. So immediately with the wording change, the name change, there were a lot of changes that came with the contract, giving TNA, Gupta-owned TNA, the New Age, more power. So what happened firstly was when Brian Molefe agreed to it, he was acting outside his powers in that he only had the power to sign off on sponsorships worth 10 million, but he was signing off on things way more than that. And the very all-important termination clause. TNA, from what we hear, essentially got Transnet to remove this termination clause. Therefore, essentially, Advocate Kate Hofmeyer today, she was leading evidence. She said what this meant was it actually took the power from Transnet so that they couldn't terminate the deal if TNA wasn't delivering what it promised to.
All right, let's take a listen to what he had to say.
It was now escalated to my GM to say I'm kind of difficult or I'm making it difficult for conclusion of this contract. Now my GM, Mr. Mbodiso Skoyela, called me in regarding this and said, hey, Chief, they're saying there's a problem regarding this. I said, no. Our counterparts in TNA, they want me to scratch out to clause 12, and I will not be able to do that because that's the clause that protects us as Transnet to say in case we want to cancel this, we've got to rely on this.
And then we heard about SAA.
Oh, absolutely. Today's testimony was just so Gupta-related. What we heard was, firstly, who testified was Vuyisile Khona. He was the former SAA CEO and board chair, similarly to Jabu Mabuza, wore 2 hats at the same time. And what we heard is that Public Enterprises Minister at the time, this is 2012, was Malusi Gigaba. And Khona says he received a phone call from Gigaba's advisor one day asking him to come to a meeting at an individual's residence. It so happens that this residence happened to be Saxon World, where Tony Gupta, Duduzane Zuma, and Gigaba's advisor were all present. What Khona says is, firstly, at the time, he found it very strange because he didn't even know who the Gupta was, let alone the family and, all the negativity that shrouded them. And what he also found strange was that he was being asked to meet in his capacity as CEO, but at a private individual's residence. He felt if somebody needed to speak to him in his capacity, they needed to come to his office. And something else that was rather shady is that Tony Gupta allegedly offered him 500,000 Rand in cash. And he was also very interested in a consulting contract that SAA had recently awarded, which they gave to Lufthansa Consulting. But it seemed as though Tony Gupta was pushing for SAA to award it to McKinsey & Company.
Yeah, shady, dodgy, all those words, you can use all of that. All still allegations, though. Thanks so much for that. Appreciate it. Riante Naidu. Still